On our newscast tonight, Washington says its stance on historical and territorial issues in Northeast Asia remains unchanged after comments by a senior U.S. diplomat drew a strong reaction from Korea and China. No contact from a Korean-Canadian pastor in North Korea on a humanitarian mission for a month. His church fears the regime that prohibits the free practice of any religion may be holding him captive. A stronger army for a strong China. That's Chinese President Xi Jinping's vision, and it will be a major topic of discussion at two major upcoming political meetings in Beijing. Stay with us for these stories and more.
Hello and welcome everyone. This is Early Edition at 6, live from Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us. We begin at the National Assembly, where a comprehensive anti-corruption bill finally got the green light just about 30 minutes ago,
That's right. The passage of this bill, first submitted to the parliament in 2013, comes after years of political wrangling. The newly enacted law aims to put an end to various types of corruption in Korean society. It stipulates that civil servants who receive $900 or more in cash can either be jailed for up to 3 years or receive 5 times a bigger punishment. But if the recipient reports a bribery attempt, they will be exempt from punishment. Lawmakers also decided to allow a 1.5-year grace period for enforcement of the law from the date of its passage, as proposed by the government. Now, following a huge backlash in Korea, Washington has stressed that comments made by a senior U.S. official, Sherman, on East Asian affairs were in no way targeting any specific country. But watchers in Seoul say it's not enough to calm the waters. Arirang's Kim has more.
Washington has moved to clarify recent controversial comments made by a senior U.S. official and said its stance on historical tensions in Northeast Asia remains the same. This comes after U.S. Undersecretary of State Sherman on Friday urged leaders to refrain from stirring up nationalist feelings. Seoul's foreign ministry had responded quickly, saying it would not take her comments lightly. Sherman's remarks were seen as being directed at South Korea and China, which are critical of Japan for denying its wartime atrocities, such as its sexual enslavement of women. And looking to diffuse the controversy, the U.S. State Department said Sherman's comments were not directed at a particular leader in the region. It added that South Korea and Japan are Washington's most important U.S. allies in East Asia, and that it's important that Seoul and Tokyo maintain constructive relations for peace and prosperity in the region.
Obviously, our three countries share a lot in common, and in no way was she speaking about any one person or any one country.
Harf did not elaborate, but the State Department told Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency that historical issues should be dealt with in a manner that promotes healing and reconciliation. It emphasized that Japan's past statements apologizing to the victims of its wartime aggression marked an important chapter in Japan improving relations with its neighbors. However, there are voices of concern that the U.S. doesn't want to involve itself in Northeast Asia history because it wants to maintain its relationship with Japan. Experts say Washington is seeking to strengthen its relationship with Japan and Korea to counter China's growing military presence in East Asia. Kim, Arirang News.
North Korea made clear that it's not happy about the ongoing joint annual military exercises between Seoul and Washington, and now we are getting reports that Pyongyang may be ready to fire off a medium-range ballistic missile. Quoting military sources, local media say the regime deployed 2 missile vehicles a few days back from its missile station in the northwestern Pyongan province. That's where North Korea fired 2 Nodong missiles last March. Nodong missiles are single-stage ballistic missiles with a range of 1,300 kilometers and can carry a warhead of up to 700 kilograms. South Korean officials are keeping a close eye on the situation as this comes just a day after Pyongyang fired 2 short-range missiles into the East Sea. Now, a church in Toronto says it has lost contact with its Korean-Canadian pastor for more than a month now. The pastor was in North Korea for a humanitarian mission, and this is raising fears that he might be held captive by the communist regime. For more on this story, here's Arirang's Hwang Sung-hee.
It wasn't his first visit to North Korea. Korean-Canadian pastor Reverend Lee Hyun-soo had made numerous trips to oversee a nursing home, a nursery, and an orphanage in North Korea's northeastern city of Rajin. That's why his Toronto-based Light Korean Presbyterian Church wasn't initially worried when they lost contact with him. After last hearing from him on January 31st, the church expected him to be out of contact until February 4th. When Im didn't contact them, members of the church waited another 21 days to allow for a possible Ebola quarantine. North Korea's anti-Ebola measures require foreign visitors to be placed under quarantine for 3 weeks. Im had been involved in a variety of missionary projects in North Korea for more than 20 years. The Canadian government says consular officials are in contact with Im's family, but declined to comment on Im's situation. North Korea takes a hard line against religion of any sort, seeing it as a threat to the ruling Kim dynasty. While a UN report estimates up to 400,000 of North Korea's 24 million population are Christians, that number is impossible to verify because none of them can freely practice their religion. In 2007, a Korean-Canadian pastor was detained by North Korean authorities for worshiping in public. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has slammed North Korea for its human rights abuses, saying tens of thousands of people are living as virtual slaves. In his keynote speech at the 28th UN Human Rights Council in Geneva on Monday, Kerry said there is no freedom of expression in the North since Kim Jong-un executes anyone who disagrees with him. He added that for decades, the North Korean regime has subjugated its citizens through starvation and torture, causing hundreds of thousands of people to lose their lives. Kerry also said the UN Security Council putting Pyongyang's human rights situation issue on its agenda last year was a clear condemnation of what is happening inside the North. And as we reported, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is in Geneva. The UN Human Rights Council is not the only thing on his agenda by far. He is also talking with his Iranian counterpart to hammer out a framework for a nuclear deal ahead of a deadline later this month. On the other side of the globe, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Washington preparing to make his case before the U.S. Congress squarely against that nuclear deal. The Israeli leader addressed a pro-Israel lobbying group on Monday where he said he had a moral obligation to speak up against a nuclear Iran that will pose a threat to his country's survival. He also underlined that his speech was not meant to disrespect U.S. President Barack Obama in any way. And a major offensive is underway in Iraq to take back the strategic city of Tikrit from Islamic State militants. It's a massive operation with forces numbering in the tens of thousands, and victory is crucial for future plans to retake Mosul, Iraq's second largest city, also under IS control. Our Son Jung-in has this story.
The thunderous sounds of artillery and warplanes were heard outside Tikrit as Iraqi forces attacked Islamic State strongholds in the northern province of Salahuddin.
We prepared these weapons to dislodge the extremists from Tikrit.
The Iraqi Prime Minister ordered forces to regain the territory and to avoid killing civilians.
Our goal is to release the ordinary people from oppression and terror threats from IS. We must protect the lives of civilians and the property in the city.
The massive operation to retake Tikrit from the IS group is reportedly made up of some 30,000 soldiers. The Saddam Hussein's hometown fell into the hands of the extremist group last summer. The Iraqi military commander of the Salahuddin region, Abdul Wahab Asadi, told state television that the operation was going as planned. Latest reports say Iraqi forces have seized at least 2 districts near Tikrit. The number of casualties is still being verified. Unlike other anti-IS operations in Iraq and Syria, the United States is taking a back seat this time, as Iraq did not ask for any support or U.S. involvement. Instead, Iran's military is playing a significant role in helping Iraq drive the Islamic State militants from Tikrit. Capturing the town is viewed as crucial in any future plans to retake Mosul, Iraq's second-largest city, also under IS control. U.S. military officials have said that mission could be launched as early as April. 손정인, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, China's top political advisors have gathered to kickstart the country's biggest annual political meeting. The first of the two big sessions, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, has just gotten underway in Beijing. It will cover many topics, but one of their focal points will be the country's military spending plans. Our Kwon So-wa has more.
Military spending is sure to be one of the hot topics on the table at this year's two major political meetings in Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping's vision for a strong China includes building a stronger army.
An expansion of military power according to a nation's economic growth is inevitable. The same goes for China.
China's military spending had been on the decline until 2013, but increased by 12% last year to more than $130 billion, putting China behind top military spender, the United States. China's defense budget is expected to increase again this year, especially given the country's involvement in a territorial dispute with Japan over an island chain in the East China Sea, and Tokyo's announcement earlier this year of its biggest defense budget ever.
National defense modernization is the key to modern warfare. It's like the nerves inside a body.
There is global interest in the upcoming announcement as many countries try to narrow the gap in military spending with China. China's 2015 defense budget is expected to be unveiled on the opening day of the National People's Congress on Thursday. Kwon So-wa, Arirang News.
Business partners face a one-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Laah Hyun-kyung and Daniel Che.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
The amount of money Koreans spend overseas appears to be increasing. Many factors are at play, but one of the biggest is a surge in the number of people traveling abroad. Our Shin Se-min tells us more.
Koreans have been busy spending their money outside Korea amid a slump in domestic demand. Koreans' total overseas credit card spending reached more than $12 billion last year, largely driven by a steady increase in the number of overseas travelers. The steady rise in overseas travelers is largely attributed to a weak yen and low oil prices, which drove down airline ticket prices and in turn boosted overseas spending. Koreans spent a record amount of money on overseas travel in January, breaking the previous record set last July. The Bank of Korea said Tuesday that the amount was more than $1.9 billion, the highest recorded so far, and a 17% increase from the same month last year. And experts say that it's not just high-income earners who are going overseas for vacations.
A stronger infrastructure and cheaper flights have made overseas trips more accessible to a wider income group, leading to more money being spent there. And more travelers are taking advantage of the stronger Korean currency and using it as an opportunity to go overseas, mostly to Japan.
He said that while the Korean government can't stop Koreans from traveling overseas, it needs to arrange more tour packages to draw both Korean and foreign visitors and make them want to return for a second visit. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Consumer prices in Korea last month grew at the slowest pace in nearly 16 years. Statistics Korea says prices went up by a mere 0.5% from a year earlier in February, growing in the 0% range for the third month in a row. Officials attributed the low growth to the recent drop in global oil prices, which has dragged down domestic oil prices by over 5%. Some analysts have voiced concerns about the possibility of deflation, while others have ruled it out, citing the fact that core inflation, which excludes petroleum products, grew by 2.3% from a year ago. Now, Korea's leading automaker Hyundai Motor appears to be having quite a hard time on its home turf as imported brands continue to make inroads here in Korea. A Hyundai official speaking on condition of anonymity says it will be hard for the company to secure a 40% market share in Korea by the end of the year if no measures to counter foreign competition are taken. The automaker's market share in January fell to below 40%, and industry watchers say the February figure could drop even further since there were fewer work days due to the Lunar New Year holiday. Hyundai's market share last year stood at roughly 41%, while its affiliate Kia Motors stood at 28%. That's the first time their combined market share has dropped below 70% since Hyundai and Kia merged in 1998. Now, the burden on Korea's shrinking working population to support the elderly has increased at a worrying rate in recent years. Figures released by Statistics Korea on Tuesday show that the number of elderly people that working people between the age of 15 and 64 will have to support has more than tripled over the last 4 decades. This year, the ratio of working age people to people over 65 is estimated to be 100 to 18. That figure is the highest since the government began tracking data in 1970. Experts warn that if the aging society continues in tandem with the low birth rate, it will have a devastating effect on the economy. They suggest increasing women's economic participation by creating a more flexible work environment and expanding child care services.
Well, Michael Jordan is known by many nicknames, most commonly called his airness and, of course, money, for a good reason. He has $1 million smile. Now, scratch that, $1 billion smile. He joined a number of billionaires who are on the rise, and Michael Jordan made that list. And the man whose face is on the brand of sneakers that's selling world over and always in demand is joining the number of 290 new faces on Forbes magazine's Rich list, following the footsteps of Bill Gates, who topped the list this year for the 16th time, were tech entrepreneurs from Uber, Airbnb, and Snapchat, all under the age of 40. China was the country with the largest class of new billionaires, adding 71 to its list, followed by the US, India, and Germany. Korea's Lee Gun-hee, chairman of Samsung Group, came in at number 110. That's down 8 slots from last year. Feeling angry from time to time is perfectly normal, but flying into an uncontrollable rage could be a sign of bigger underlying issues. Men under the age of 30 are said to be more prone to these dangerous outbursts, but there are ways to channel this energy in a more positive way. For this story, here's our Kim Min-ji.
A man recently drove his car into his girlfriend for breaking up with him. And another became violent in the middle of a highway tunnel after another driver did not give way to him. These are just a couple of cases that show individuals failing to control their anger. The intense rush of uncontrollable rage is normally linked to some kind of personality or behavioral disorder. A recent study revealed that out of 13,000 people who were treated for such disorders last year, 2/3 were under 30 years old. What's especially interesting is that although the overall number of patients hasn't changed much in recent years, the proportion of men in their 20s jumped 13% over the past 5 years.
This might be due to young patients feeling they were not rewarded enough for their efforts during their teens, and the anger and frustration builds up. They can feel no regrets about their bursts of anger as they feel they have the right to be angry.
Personality or behavioral disorders are not only characterized by angry outbursts. People with interpersonal problems and those who refuse to believe they have done anything wrong in certain situations may also have a disorder. Doctors say that finding a healthy and undisruptive way to release built-up anger and stress is key to alleviating such disorders. Taking the anger out on other people actually increases the frustration and can sometimes lead to bigger, even legal problems. Experts say the best approach is to focus on relatively strenuous activities like hiking or running, or having a hobby to focus on. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Question, would you give up chocolate in lieu of surfing the internet on your mobile device? Well, nearly 8 out of 10 Koreans said they would. A recent study says 77% of Koreans could live without reading the newspaper and around 60% without books instead of going online. Fast food, alcohol and coffee and indulgences many respondents felt less attached to than the internet. A third of respondents even said they'd give up cars and sex. With more applications, content, and financial technology services, the mobile internet is expected to be an even more pervasive part of modern life. Moving on to other stories, a set of photographs taken in Korea during the late 19th and early 20th century has been revealed in the U.S. Some of them include never-before-seen images of key figures in Korea's history. Our Im Yoon-hee has more.
The fifth son of Korea's Emperor Gwangmu, Prince Yi-gang lived during a tumultuous time in Korean history, during the First Sino-Japanese War. This recently discovered shot is one of the earliest pictures of the prince, taken in 1899 when he left to study abroad in the United States. Another photograph is of Hungsun Daewon-gun, known to some Westerners as Prince Kung. He served as regent of the Joseon dynasty while King Gojong was a minor during the 1860s. The picture on the right, believed to be him in his 40s, shows a much younger version of him. Seo Jae-pil, also known as Philip Jason, was a leader in Korea's fight for independence, even putting together the doomed Kapshin coup to oust the Joseon-era leadership. He was the first Korean to receive U.S. citizenship, and this new picture on the left shows a young 23-year-old Seo, taken in 1887. Another leader of the failed Kapshin coup was Park Young-hyo. This rare image of the Korean politician at 25 before his involvement with the Enlightened movement of Korea. And lastly, Kim Ok-yoon, a reformist during the late Joseon dynasty. The image on the left shows him at 35 years old, and though there are many black and white photos of him, this is the first known color photograph of Kim. And while these pictures reveal a small piece of Korea's history, musician Hwang Byung-gi holds on to history in his own way. For decades, he's been a master of the popular gayagum, one of Korea's most played traditional Korean instruments. And now, a new book about Hwang, compiled by English scholar Andrew Killick over 25 years, has recently been published in Korean. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
This little weather update doesn't concern me because I take public transportation, but as for people like you who drive, it's not exactly welcome news. The rain from this morning has returned.
And for people who walk, of course.
Yeah.
And it's rush hour now, so one thing for sure is that it's not going to help ease the traffic at all. For more details on the weather, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle, what do you have for us?
Good evening, guys. It's been either gray or wet here in the nation today, and currently the rain clouds have gathered over in the capital, bringing down some rain, and this is expected to go out throughout this evening. Now, of up to 5 millimeters of rain is expected for most parts of the nation, while in some parts of Gangwon-do, Chungcheongbuk-do, Gyeongsang-buk-do, and the upper regions of the capital is expecting snow. Now, the amount isn't heavy, but still be extra careful on the roads. Now, a cold spell is an unusual condition that we get in the first and the last week of March when the season is in transitioning phase. Now, after the rain and snow today, strong winds will accompany us as well, leading us into a colder morning tomorrow. Now, having a look at the readings for tomorrow, Seoul will start off the Wednesday morning at -4 and gets up to 3 in the afternoon, while Daegu and Busan will top to 6 and 8 degrees. Moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 5, Dokdo hits 1, while Mankungang dips low way below at -7 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And we've come to the end of our newscast. As always, thank you so much for staying with us. To our viewers in different time zones, have a wonderful day. This has been Daniel Tre.
And I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. If you are tuning in from Korea, have a great rest of the evening. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.